September, the Stanley Cup Final. Instead of training camp. It's 2020. It's a little different. And this is going to be a lot of fun because a good sign that the world is returning to normal as we bring you into In Goal Radio, the podcast. Aaron Millard, along with the co-founders of In Goal Magazine, David Hutchison and Kevin Woodley. In Goal Radio, the podcast, pleased to reunite with our sponsor, the Hockey Shop, Source for Sports Surrey. And Woody and Hutch, the pandemic took a toll on a lot of people, a lot of parts of our lives, disrupted so many of our traditions. But this is nice to be back in lockstep, Hutch.
Couldn't be happier than to have our friends from the Hockey Shop back. It feels like hockey is back with the playoffs have been absolutely fantastic for us, and we've got kids back on the ice, at least in BC. And Cam is back with Woody. So yeah, it almost feels like normal, Woody. Were you wearing masks while you were doing the segment?
We took the masks off for the segment, but I have long cords on the recorder, so we made sure we observed social distancing as we were talking. I brought 2 microphones in so we could sort of be spaced apart. Probably a little easier on the sound edits too there, Hutch, so we're not echoing over top of each other. They do, you feel comfortable in the store. Most of the staff wears masks. They'll ask you where your comfort point is, what you'd prefer, and sort of make sure that they want to make you feel comfortable. No surprise that they're ahead of the curve in terms of, like booking appointments for fittings for goalie gear. Like if you want to get Cam and his expertise in there and have a sort of sit down and really go through a full lineup, you can sort of arrange that in advance. So it is nice to be back. I did feel a little bit for Cam today, though, because I haven't been in there in 6 months. So like you can imagine, I didn't touch everything. Again? Well, I didn't touch everything. I didn't do my normal, like put my hand in every glove and, and test the brake. Well, but I didn't flex every stick. I actually didn't touch any of them, but I just basically walked around and looked at gear for like 30 minutes. So it's a little easier on them. And then I'm not taking it off the shelf and making them put it back. But I was still made myself annoying as can be. But despite my my ability to sort of just hover and be around and be annoying, we had a lot of fun, and it was good to catch up with him and good to chat gear again. Because
there's a lot of new gear since the last time you were in there.
Yeah, we got lots to catch up on, and some of it is stuff that we've talked about here at In Goal before, but we're going to make our way through because that's the beauty. Not just our feedback, and we do a pretty good job, I think, of having multiple testers, but starting to get feedback from Cam at retail, the people he's selling it to, the guys in the store who are taking it out and testing it, just that other layer of feedback on all these lines. And we're going to start today with CCM Access line. I'll start with the pads, and then next week we're going to go, rather than do all the gloves and everything together, next week we're going to jump right over to the Bauer ultrasonic pads. So two of the products that we've hit on, but we're going to get another layer of expertise by having Cam weigh in on all the subtle little things that they're seeing and some of the ways that they're ordering them when they do custom orders. Sort of that specs that they find their customers are liking when they want to order it outside of sort of what's stock.
There's another layer of expertise coming to the Access review though too, isn't there? It's an international review this time. Yes. They've been tested. I haven't seen any on. I guess we did see the one on ice photo. I know there's been some serious couch testing going on in Las Vegas,
yes, there has.
Nevada.
I was wearing my my pads, CCM Access pads, playing with the strapping as I've been watching games during the course of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and then I got to go on the ice with them. And I will say this, as somebody that was probably 2 or 3 lines behind, I cannot believe how much pucks explode off the face of the CCM Access pads. It just flies off, and those rebounds just are not there for anybody to whack home and jam away at. It's awesome. I'm in love.
And you were in CCM before.
And I was in CCM. I was in the Retroflex before, but again, probably a few years old. And I was. I'll be flat out, I'm old school. So the idea of having a pad that the puck exploded off of, I had trouble getting my head around. And in our conversations with you too, and talking to different goaltenders and hearing the benefits of it, I was certainly looking forward to experiencing it. And Yeah, not that I was playing at a high level, but it's really neat and unique, and I see how you can use it to your advantage. And I know Kelly Rudy was talking about it on Hockey Night in Canada the other night about how you can place pucks in good spots, high end zones in a way, and almost use it as a pass if you get that opportunity. And he's right on the money with that.
Well, you said old school meets new school, Darren. I saw a 2-pad stack with Axis put the puck up and over the glass out of play the other day. So there you go. Yeah, literally.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a whole new 2-pad stack variety.
Trying to get our head around a lot of different things, and one of those is you mentioned whether or not Woody and Cam were wearing masks while they were doing the interview. And I immediately went to, were they trying on the
Axis
goal
mask?
Yeah. That's what I went to, thinking, well, these two goalie guys, so deep into it, maybe they were doing that. But then you're talking about the COVID masks and getting through that. Should also mention, speaking of masks, one of my favorite masks of all time, Evgeni Nabokov of the San Jose Sharks, and then finished off around the National Hockey League, New York Islanders. He is going to join us in our feature interview today, and Nabby chats with Kevin Woodley. So looking forward to that. But with the Hockey Shop and Source for Sports Surrey back with us, it's nice to have our gear segment, Woody.
Yeah, let's kick it off. Let's get Cam on board here and just let's roll it off. We're pretty excited to get going. Welcome back. And I mean, welcome back, because it's been far too long since we've been here to Goalie Heaven, or as you know it through the podcast, the Hockey Shop, Source for Sports in Surrey. We are back in the basement where it is wall-to-wall goaltending. I'd take a bit of a break. COVID. You guys have been running steady, though, for a long time here. Welcome back, Cam Matwiv, to the In Goal Radio podcast. We are so happy to be back here. So happy to be talking gear again with you and have you on the podcast. Update us on what's been going on. Obviously, social distancing. We had to take a little bit of a break, but we're back. So I've been busy. How's it been going here for the past few months? It's been a while. It's been like 6 months. I miss you, buddy.
It's been too long, and without getting too gushy on you, I missed your face too, even though it is a radio face, but it's here.
Face for radio. That's
face for radio.
We're starting with a shot already. Nice. It's right back where we left off.
Well, it was great that he also even pronounced my last name right, which is fantastic. It's been long enough, but he still got the pronunciation.
I missed you enough to not butcher your last name. That says something right there.
See how excited we are? We're happy to be here. Happy to be here. So yeah, things have been busy. The shop's been, picking back up again, which is fantastic. We've seen that push back to hockey. We're set up in here quite well for distancing purposes. We're limiting the amount of people in the shop at one time just to keep people apart. So it's still that same great service you guys come to expect, but sometimes it's from behind a mask.
Now, the one thing that you guys continue pretty much throughout was online ordering. And I thought that's one thing where even there are still going to be people out there that are listening to this that aren't comfortable. Or let's be honest, we've got a lot of people across the country that have reached out and purchased stuff through you after hearing about it on the podcast. How is that expertise that you guys have established in terms of being able to listen to a goalie over the phone, maybe look at a picture over an email and be able to set them up with what they need? How has that paid off during the course of this?
First of all, a huge shout out to everyone that has mentioned us when they call in and mention that you heard about us on the podcast. It's fantastic to hear that feedback from you, and thank you all. It's helped us definitely move forward, especially when we were closed there. But that all said, yeah, I mean, our mail order business has been fantastic right now. And, we're definitely here at all times through email, through the website, or on the phone number, which I'll give my beautiful radio voice later for.
Okay, so Hockey Shop, Source for Sports, Surrey, if you're here in Vancouver or anywhere in the Lower Mainland, and as we've said before, we've had people drive up from Seattle to come here quite often. Obviously, you can't cross the border just yet, but if you're from as far away as Calgary, we have people come make the trip, or when they're in town on business, they come and see Cam down here at the Hockey Shop to get the best service, the best opinions, get set up with the gear that's going to fit your game and make you a better goaltender. It's been a bit of a weird time in that a lot of the product we're going to go over, we have so much to go over. We're going to start today with the CCM Access line. We're going to move through probably over to the ultrasonic line next week. These are products that we've done some reviews on at ingoalmag.com, but what I wanted to talk to you about was the feedback you're hearing from customers and people and your testers and the guys that work with you here in the shop that are out playing the position. It's kind of a weird year in that these are normally products that would launch in April, and here we are in mid-September just getting ready for hockey, and for a lot of people, they're seeing them for the first time. Has education been a big part of working with people as they come back in the store for the first time after months away?
Yeah, it definitely has been. I mean, if we're going to kind of narrow our focus onto kind of one thing right now, like, hey, let's bring up like the CCM Access Pad in particular. We've definitely had a lot of interest and a lot of questions coming out. It's a little bit harder because giving personal feedback on something when even myself has been off the ice for close to 6 months has been quite hard. That said, for me, it's been a lot of time to do my own homework and dive into the actual specifications of the pad a little bit more, the build, and why, for example, the CCM Access might be right for you.
So let's go through that. We've obviously had a chance, and I'm in the same boat as you. I haven't been on the ice. We have some health issues in the family and at home that just make caution necessary, frankly. So my beer league has started. They've started without me in goal, which means they're probably spoiled by competent goaltending for a change. But I'm kind of with you. But what we've done is we've leaned a lot on our junior testers, the guys who are back on the ice, whether it's in goalie camps or getting ready for their junior camps. We actually, and I gotta be honest, we have had now 3 junior A goaltenders test the CCM Access line and order it within days. So we're getting some positive feedback. Let's start with the who it's for part, the break and the flex and the fit and the feel in your mind of the CCM Access Pro pad and sort of where it fits in, having replaced the Premier pad. And we'll get to that because it's on sale. On sale. That's a great way to come back to the Hockey Shop segment at In Goal Radio Podcast with a chance to save money. But this is a departure in a lot of ways. So talk about the similarities maybe between this and the Premier and the differences.
Yeah, I mean, it's way easier to kind of go over differences than it is similarities, other than the fact that it's got CCM slapped on it. To be honest, yeah, we basically have to start from the beginning and kind of look at this pad and look how it's kind of evolved. So basically, I mean, CCM, you couldn't put out a Premier 3 at this point. It was time for a change. It was time for them to update their pad line into what has become more of that modern style of the evolution of what we call a stiff pad. So basically, yeah, bottom line, who's this pad for? It's a very stiff pad designed to be a lot more rigid in the butterfly, sit nice and tall. You are going to be relying on your angles and your blocking a little bit more with this to a bit of a degree. I find even when I did have a chance to test it out, and this was actually a year ago when I got a chance to try it on in the early stages, a lot of support in the butterfly allows you to sit nice and tall, a lot of rigidity to the pad, but that pays off in a nice solid seal all the way throughout.
Okay, now we're talking rigidity, but that's up from the shin through into the thigh rise, Cam. What's different primarily from a Premier, or especially I should say from a Premier, is that boot is different. Flatter angle, softer flex. This is not a Premier boot where it's steep angle and a stiff flex. This is a lot more like an E-flex boot in terms of angle and flex. The ability to sort of, soft's not the right word. Flex, I guess, is the right word, but it's comparable, more comparable to E-flex. In fact, the build of the core is pretty much an E-flex with a stiff, everything stiff from sort of the shin up. It's actually a build that NHL goaltenders were able to get on custom order, but nobody else was. As you said, it's where the game is going. Flexible down low, but structure up top.
Mm-hmm. And you've seen that from other competitors, which there'll be another episode one other day. But that said, yeah, you're 100% correct. With that boot that's a little bit more flexible now, even in comparison to previous models, i.e. the Premier and whatnot, that allows you to get over top of your shin a little bit more with your knee. That's helping you, especially in your forward crouch, any reverse VH positions, which is a hot contested topic recently. But it gives you, again, that good forward motion where if you have something too rigid, the pad will just kick itself up higher and higher on you as you try to crouch forward. This allows the pad to sit on your skate and stay there without basically hovering up in a way that you would see a lot of the stiffer older pads that we saw in the past. That used to happen quite a lot.
And this is also allows you, because of that flex, you can get a deep push, a deep flex down there while still maintaining more connection. So you can wear it a little tighter down at the bottom, whereas a Premier was a pad that was designed to be worn pretty much loose throughout.
Correct. Yeah. You're basically the word I think we were all looking for there is connection, and the connected feel to the pad, which, to me has been a big marketing point of that Access pad itself, is that more connected feel you have, or for example, I have when I tried it out, and then I've had in previous like premieres, or even let's rewind back to RBK days and things like that.
Well, those are pads that were designed to basically move around your leg and fit loose. This is one where still does a lot of that up top, but like as you said, and I think we're a little rusty, buddy, so it took us a while to come to that word, that connection to the pad down at the bottom that allows you to sort of play with a lot of that power and flexibility that goalies are looking for these days. Now, speed skin stock, we can talk about the graphics a little bit, but first of all, in terms of that shape, a little bit stiffer on the inside edge. It's got the speed skin. They've definitely cut some weight, thinner profile. We were amazed at how light it was. And the feedback we're getting from these junior A goalies that have tested it with us is the rebounds are stiffer because they've got the active rebound technology in the face, and the sliding is notably improved. And there's been a couple times over the years where we've had testers that, frankly, weren't getting speed skin, and so the first time in it would be our test set, and that's why they felt it slid better. But in this case, 2 of the junior A guys were actually guys that were in speed skin and E-Flex, and they still felt a difference in how well this slid. In their minds, it's a combination of that firmer, stiffer inside edge and that thinner profile. They feel speed skin and Axis goes together like hand and glove in terms of that sliding.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot to cover there in what you just pointed out. And, let's talk about the sliding and how and why it has improved, because the speed skin itself hasn't changed, but how the pad actually contact the ice has. The calf plate, one of the biggest important upgrades you're going to see. See how CCM has actually raised and puffed out the calf plate to give a bit more stability, when a lot of times you'll see it flat. Some other companies you've seen use shin pillows and things like that, some of which are legal, some of which are legal.
Well, let's be honest, the pillows are legal right up to the NHL.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean by legal versus legal. That said, what you have here now raises and changes the pressure that you're putting down onto the ice, and actually alleviates some of that pressure. So in theory, there's still the same amount of surface area contacting the ice between a Premier and an Axis pad. However, what changes now is how much pressure is contacting that. So even if something's contacting, the more pressure you put down, the more resistance. If I leave up and can alleviate some of that pressure and rejig where we're at, that increases your slidability of the pad.
Rebounds, max rebound, got the technology in it. In terms of, they used to call it Adiprene Plus. It was Adiprene Plus, easy for me to say. That was a product, a foam that they had through Adidas, and we used to have the balls and we'd bounce them, and one ball would hit the ground and die, and the other ball would hit the ground and bounce all the way back up as high as you dropped it. That foam, the bouncy one, they put that in the face of this one to try and encourage more active rebounds, which we all know goaltenders are trying to get towards.
Correct. So max rebound debuted in the Premier 2, and now we see it in the Axis pad. Now it's max rebound plus. So it's even better. It's got a plus
thicker
sign at the end of it. Yes.
They
It's
put
thicker.
more
It's
of
better.
it.
Exactly.
And yet, the pad still weighs noticeably less compared to the Premier.
That's correct. You know what? You're going to ask me exactly how much it weighs, and I'm going to be like, hey, I'll direct you to my beautiful website, which has all that information on it.
Or you could check out ingoalmag.com because it's at the top of our review as well. That's the beauty of this partnership. We both got reviews to tease. Changes on the inside. Quick motion strapping kind of remains the same. We like the 3D knee stack that they've developed there. Any other features you want to call out there on the Axis pad?
Correct. So quick motion strap has gone just through a little bit of a refinement. You just see it a little bit more segmented now, so it adds a little bit more wrap, a bit more of a connected feel, what the guys were looking for, but even though still adding a little bit of rigidity. Whereas on the Premier 2, you would find it was just a soft piece of foam. Here they've segmented some stiffer pieces of low density foam just to get it a little bit more of a connected wrap feel to the pad. Other than that, in terms of leg channel wise, you're looking at something that's not too unfamiliar for a CCM, Premier pad. Open leg channel, which is always still what they've gone with. But again, that quick motion strap is what really giving you that connected feel to the pad for sure.
Okay, so we're going to stick with the pads today. We'll save the gloves and blocker for another day. But before we kind of move on, and let's talk quickly about the graphics on the other side. Obviously, there's a printed graphic on this one as well. It's interesting because it really gives you options. You can mix and match the colors, have color on white background, or you can just blend different shades and tones of the color. And that's actually, I think you've got right now a red and black one, just two primary colors. Solid color pad crew, as our friend at the Goal Net would say. Great look. I've come around on sort of having the same colors throughout on this pad versus really mixing and matching. We went crazy with our set and tried to change everything up and just have as many different tones as we could. But the tone on tone of this graphic really pops.
So options are fantastic. However, options can be overwhelming. This is one of those pads that before you knock the graphic, sit and actually spend some time on the customizer and then make your judgment. A lot of initial feedback and even my own personal reaction to the pad was like, okay, that's a lot. But after I spent some time with the customizer and found some colors that have worked really well, I really do like the tone-on-tone graphic, which you see on our wall and in our source exclusive pads in particular. Those just, it seems to pop the best on the pad. But that said, I would say, especially with the addition of the UV graphics and things this year, you got to sit down, you got to play with the customizer before you judge this graphic for sure.
Yeah, we did we did things like green over blue, different shades of blue, things like that. And it worked. I thought ours popped. But I actually saw a lot of white base sets with just little accent colors. And then you have red on red with the UV. And I think that pops. Actually, basically, I'm going to slag the job I did on the customizer. I love our pads, but when I see different ways that those graphics have been used, I think there were ways I would do it differently myself now. And to me, that speaks to the fact that this is a pad you can make look a lot of different ways.
I think you're missing the tire pump to me here. Next time you can call me, I'll design your pads for you.
Cam, I believe, is that you offering your services? If people want to call you, you'll do the design for them, just give them colors or what?
Is this the time where we get to put in the phone number plug?
I think it's the time.
604-589-8299. Reach me anytime.
Okay, so that's for pad design, custom Cam Matwiv, Hockey Shop pad design. You mentioned source specs. Is there anything that you've got in terms of the Axis that is specific to the store or something you chose to do a little differently than a stock pad everywhere else, or did you pretty much go with stock here?
I think I'll leave you on a bit of a cliffhanger here because in the Pro, we've kind of put a bit of our own spin on it, but we got a whole different monster altogether for that A1.9, which is that mid-level pad, but I think that's for another day.
Okay, so we're going to save A1.9. The Pro is pretty much stock then?
That's correct. Barring a few minor things that we have switched around on a few different pads, which are all called out up on the website, but you can always give me a call to go over it.
Okay, now, before we let you go, and we've been going a long time, because I just missed you. I wanted to talk a lot. Premiere. Every time we have something new, and normally this is February or March, we're talking about this. Instead, it's September. If you're a beer leaguer and you don't want to go full pop on the latest and greatest, if you happen to just absolutely love the Premier 2 pad line and you're looking to save some money, sort of stock up on a couple, now is the time. Regular price $2,000. Did I see correctly? You originally had it down to $1,600, and now it's down to $1,400 for a Premier 2 pad.
That's correct. Yeah, they're sitting.
That's Canadian, folks. That is Canadian.
Canadian.
That's like 3 cups of coffee in the U.S. right now.
Yes, that's correct. I mean, for all you U.S. folk, though, unfortunately, I can't ship across the border, especially when it comes to CCM. So
just a guy, somebody knows a guy at a border or something. Actually, I guess the borders are a little tougher these days. Okay. If you get paid in U.S. funds and you live in Canada, like somebody who's talking into the mic right now, this is a hell of a deal.
There you go. That's the way to go.
How much you got left of that Premier 2 stock?
We got a couple sets left off the top of my head. You got me, but I'm staring at a nice all-black set. It's a 33-2 right now. I know I got a couple 34 ones on the wall as well in some very different colors.
Okay, so we have pretty much hit it all. We got the new Axis pad. We're off to a roaring start with the return of the Hockey Shop Source for Sports. Make sure you check them out at thehockeyshop.com. Back on the podcast with In Goal Radio, the podcast, and we capped it off with a sale price. Cam, home run in the first episode. I know I got a mixed metaphor with the sports there, but way to go, top shelf, all that stuff. I'm excited about this, as people can probably tell by my voice, and I've had very little sleep. Thank you very much for rejoining us. I look forward to being back in the shop every week.
Not a problem, Kevin.
Oh, it's good to hear you two back together and doing what you guys do best and talking goaltending and talking gear at Source for Sports Surrey and the Hockey Shop. This is my first endeavor into a flat face pad and a stiffer pad. So just to give me, and it slides really well too. So I don't want to go all off on a tangent here on my experiences, but just a footnote, Woody, on some of the commentary that you had with Cam.
Well, I think the commentary we had with Cam sort of matches the feedback we're getting from the guys that are testing it through us. And I think that is one of the downsides of everything that's going on with COVID is the lack of sort of the ability to go out and demo a pad. And that was a bit of a tough break for CCM on this one because it was such a departure from their past lines. And so I think there was a lot of hesitation from people because it was so different and the uncertainty of what this pad is, what it was supposed to be, how it was supposed to work. And, I think we did a pretty good job of sort of outlining those sort of characteristics of the pad in our review. And I'd still recommend people go and read that in depth because you will have a feel for how it's going to fit, how it's going to flex, how it's going to move. But Cam reiterated a lot of it. So it was good to hear that was the feedback that he was getting. And I think above all, and Hutch touched on this as well. And I mentioned it in the interview with Cam, like I've got 3 junior A guys now that have tried this pad, gone into it completely uncertain about what to expect. One in CCM and 2 others that weren't. And within a few days of trying it, order it. Like just really, really like the pad.
What did they like?
I thought it was interesting because I've had guys test in speed skin before and notice the difference, but it's because, a lot of them weren't in it originally. They were coming out of just a regular Gen Pro CCM. This time I had a guy say the same thing and I'm like, well, were you in a different brand? Were you in a different, had you not tried speed skin before? He's, oh no, I had speed skin on my E-Flex. This slides better. Like speed skin on this pad with that firmer inside edge and that thinner profile, this slides better. And they, like I said, that inner edge has all been sort of stiffened up and it's firmer and it slides. So that's kind of the feedback. We've got the rebounds that you talked about. And we talk about the junior A guys. I don't know, Hutch, I don't know if Dylan Ferguson is ordering Axis or if he's sticking with E-Flex, but similar type of feedback from him the first time he tried it as well.
Yeah. I know he was certainly intending to order it right after he tried it, and he's an incredibly athletic goaltender and really wants something that moves with him and is responsive and has been a tried and true E-Flex wearer for years and wore them once, and I want these. So, and then similar to you, I've had them on probably 4 or so junior A guys as well, and almost without exception, they were just ready to make a purchase right away. So, as I said, when we were talking offline here, I think it was enough of a departure as a line that people were a little bit skeptical when they first saw it, and the proof is in the wearing.
Yeah, and without the ability to do that, I think the best I could sum it up, and hopefully I'm right on this, Hutch, but I think people like Premier it was that steep boot, it was that really stiff pad, stiff boot, moved around your leg. There was no connection. It was designed to be worn loose. This pad has the flex and fit of an E-Flex, but it's just stiffer up through the knee and into the thigh.
Yeah.
So you're still able to play like a Dylan Ferguson can play that athletic style and feel connected to the pad down low and feel like the boot is really flexing with his foot, but it just has a little more of that structure and firmness to the shape up top. And it's not like it's super stiff. It's not like, we're not talking like Corey Crawford, Premier One, rail straight. You might as well put a sheet of plywood on these things. Like it's not that stiff, but it's stiffer, not as soft on the face as the E-Flex. And as we talked to, Cam mentioned in the interview, max rebound times 2. So they took that foam that we've teased on in goal where you drop the ball and it bounces all the way back up, and they doubled the thickness on it on this one compared to the past and still managed to cut the weight. So there's a lot to like about this pad. I'm dying to get it on the ice myself. I'm really been relying on secondhand reviews and all these junior A guys were getting it on just because my world and some of the situation at home, I'm not able to sort of take that risk from a COVID perspective. But boy, I can't wait till I do.
Even with my skinny legs, you can have a real solid connection to the pad. Like it can tighten up. I like wearing it a little bit tighter, but you can wear it. The fluidness of and flexibility of how tight you want to wear it is really there. And that was one thing that I was wondering about going into it, and it's right there.
So it works for the old school guys too.
Works for definitely old school. I look good in it. I'll say that. Talking about an old school guy, he's a couple of years younger than Hutch and I, but Evgeni Nabokov is a great person to talk to right now because we are going to have an all-Russian Stanley Cup Final with starting goaltenders. So, Woody, as you are going to chat with Nabby here in just a little bit, give me an idea on the background and where the connection came with chatting with the man that I used to call Johnny Nabokov because it was easier to say when I was doing the highlights back in the day.
Well, Nabby's one of the guys that was very good to us when I first started out before even in goal, actually, back in the old goalie news days with Ian Clark. Did a couple of feature stories on him. And this was part of that generation. Remember when I was first learning the position and learning and writing about it, et cetera, early 2000s, like he was in his heyday playing like 70 games a year, still getting up off the wrong leg, or I should say the same leg, no matter which direction he was going. And we used to have like conversations about that. And Wayne Thomas, the goalie coach at the time, another guy who a lot of, the older school people will know from his playing career as well, I remember once he was kind of upset because I wrote about the delays in getting up off the wrong leg, and he broke down the footage and showed me Nabby was so quick with the footwork that he was able to recover off the wrong leg and still make a push in sort of frame by frame, similar time frames as what some of the bigger, not as agile guys were doing with a proper butterfly push. So he kind of sort of called me on it and showed me the video. And that opened Nabby's just a great guy, and conversations over the years from there on during his playing days were always great. Had the pleasure of getting to be on the ice with him as he was coaching up at Net 360 in Kelowna. I want to say about 3 years ago, Hutch, he was up there, and just like salt of the earth, hilarious. Everybody loves him, but also to hear and see some of his coaching, some of the skating drills looked a little different, little old school. Funny.
Like can you give it an idea?
Just a lot more edge work, a lot more narrow stance.
Visit goalmag.com and you might even find one there.
Oh, that's a good point. We do have one of those.
We've got one up on Premium
drills
in the Pro Drills section.
That's right. So just a little more skating. And of course we think of him with that narrow stance. And the irony is, the game's really come back to that, right? You can't be. So when we were on the ice 3 years ago, that transformation hadn't even really started. And so when I say it looked old school, a lot of guys are focusing on edge control and stuff, but a lot of goalies were still playing locked in low and wide. And as the stances have narrowed up, as we talk about in the conversation, it's kind of starting to look more and more like Nabby. Maybe not like the pad straight together against the post old school, but more and more like that. So just a chance to catch up with a guy that every time I talk to him, I enjoy the conversation about the position, and well-timed, I think. The conversation was sparked by my interest in talking to him about the evolution of Russian goaltending originally, and the fact that we had already set a record in the conference finals. These conference finals were the first time in NHL history that we had 3 Russian goaltenders. And I should put a caveat in there. Nabby is from Kazakhstan originally, played for the Russian national team, as is Anton Khudobin. So Kazakhstan by birth, but both identify as Russian goaltenders, played for the Russian national team. So I feel sort of safe saying that. So the first time we've ever had 3 Russian goaltenders in the conference finals, and now the first time we're going to have 2 Russian goalies starting in the Stanley Cup Final. I thought your Golden Knights were going to make that a hard thing to do, Darren, to be honest. I thought we'd have a Sweden, a Russian in there, but with Khudobin advancing and Varlamov and Vasilevsky on the other side, it's pretty much guaranteed. And which means we're going to have, for just the second time in NHL history, a starting goaltender win the Stanley Cup as a Russian. There's been 2 Russians that have won the Cup, Nikolai Khabibulin, and that was the last time we had even 2 goalies in the conference finals. Yeah, he was with Tampa in 2004, and that's the last time we had 2 Russian goalies in the conference finals, because Nabby was actually there with the Sharks on the other side of the draw. And Ilya Bryzgalov won it as a backup in 2007, though to be fair, it probably doesn't do justice to just say he was a backup, because that was the year that Jiggy missed part of the first round, with the birth of his son and some complications there, and Briz stepped in and won 3 games there. So 2 guys have won it. We're going to have a third. And so an exciting time for Russian goaltending, and Nabby's a guy who, as you'll hear, he actually was Anton Khudobin's, Dobie told me he was the closest thing he had to a first goalie coach when he went back to Kazakhstan in the summers. and shared some drills and some skating things and some off-ice training that Dobie still does today.
And the best part is it was one of those, can you come and speak to the kids? And Evgeni Nabokov did it, and it really stuck with Anton Khudobin, one of those things, and then they kind of connected after. But it wasn't one of those ones where they had an instant relationship. It kind of cycled back, and then they bonded. And, well, to hear Nabokov tell the story is really interesting. Over 500 games played, one of the narrowest stances I can remember in the modern era, and it just, with my bow legs, you just couldn't do it. The way the body shaped up, but it's really cool the way he approached the game, and won 40 games 3 times, world champion, Olympian, and a great ambassador of the sport. Now the goaltending coach of the San Jose Sharks, and an infectious personality. You'll get a real feel of that as Nabokov chats with Woodley on In Goal Radio, the podcast with our feature interview presented by the Hockey Shop, source for sports Surrey.
Nabby, I wanted to hop in with kind of a conversation you and I had really quickly the other day, and thank you very much for giving me a couple minutes the other day to help me with an article and some quotes. It's kind of two-parter. It's what you're seeing in the playoffs from the 3 Russian goaltenders who are still playing, and sort of the evolution of the position in Russia and all this. We're seeing a trend where NHL teams are looking closer there and having a lot of success finding goaltenders over there. And I know I say Russia, it's kind of a catch-all. You know, obviously Khudobin, like yourself, is originally from Kazakhstan, but played, internationally for the Russian team. So when you watch Khudobin and Vasilevsky and Varlamov, almost 3 different tiers or generations of goaltenders that have come over, like, what are you seeing right now in the conference finals?
Well, it just you see kind of another level of goaltending right now. I think the guys are so detailed. The guys are so well prepared for the game, and they have a game plan. And I just think it's that new generation of goaltending. It's a little bit the other level of goaltending. So, and I'm really proud to watch the all the boys are battling out there, and hopefully we will see 2 Russian goalies in the finals.
What do you have a history a little bit? It goes a way back. I'm wondering if you could fill us in, because I remember talking to Dobie a couple of years ago, and he talked about you coming back home for the summer, and that was his first opportunity to get to work with you, and you taught him some things on and off the ice in terms of training that he told me he still uses today. What do you remember of that and your role, sort of the first time you got to meet him and work with him?
Well, now it's a different type of preparation, right? So now we have so many different camps going on in Russia, and obviously everywhere. It's not just in Russia, but and people are going to different camps in the summer, 2 or 3 different camps, and working a specific stuff. Well, back in the day, it almost didn't exist. Especially in Russia, I don't remember anybody having any type of camp or clinics for the goalies other than Tretiak was doing in Toronto. And when I went back, and it was back in 90, if I remember correctly, 98 or 99. So I went back and to my hometown to spend the summer. And one of my friends who was coaching Dobie and a bunch of other guys, young kids, they I think were about 13 or 12 or 13 back then. And he just asked me, do you mind coming and talking to the kids and, show them a couple drills on and off the ice? And I agreed to that. And, to be honest with you, it's, when Dobie talked about it, I remember him, but I don't remember the rest of the guys. Apparently, it was the other kids out there who also had a decent careers. And, you just go and you talk to the kids and you tell them what you like to do. You talk about the preparation. You talk about the warm-ups. And, there's just a goalie general stuff. Nothing too special out there. the way it is now, how detailed every single camp is. So that's how me and him connected. And so it's a little bit surprised me at times that the little conversation can stick with the kids that much, but it was a good example of, that some kids are really taking it to the heart, even at 12 or 13 years old when somebody talks to them. So I was a little bit surprised, I'm not going to lie.
That's funny. I think he was around 13. Where do you sit on that? Because now you're working as a goaltending coach with the San Jose Sharks. You were involved with their on the development side up until this year. That transition from playing to coaching and what you see in kids. I know you've done some work with your son's team in terms of young goaltenders. Where do you come out on this? Because I know one of the things that Dobie said when he goes back now to Russia, he worries that all those camps, as good as they are, maybe sometimes at too young of an age, they get a little too technical, a little too specific. Like obviously he plays on a lot of instinct and still has a good technical foundation, but there's instinct there. And he worries about trying to make everyone look like Bob or everyone look like Vasa. Where do you come out on, like, at what age do you think you need to start introducing the technical stuff? Because, other guys like Alexander Georgiev told me that when he was younger, it was all old school skating stuff. And as much as maybe he didn't always love it because he would be exhausted from hours of skating, he sees now the value of the foundation that was laid versus maybe at 7, 8 years old being taught something like a reverse VH.
So, I mean, I don't know, what's right, what's wrong, because a lot of people can argue over, certain philosophies, what's right, what's wrong for the goalies. My thing is, I don't want to go and change the goal and make everybody play on the reverse VH or overpost or, whatever that is, as long as, like, my goal is always, you have to know every and each way to play certain situation. And then it's your choice to decide in the game how you want to play that. Because obviously, you can play reverse VH, but if the guy is a righty or he's a lefty, on what side he is, how deep he is, that, it goes so many little details into that play. And, I actually was laughing another day where Varley was standing up on the post. He just put the two pads together and he didn't go down. But he doesn't do this every single time. He does that once in a while. Grice does the same thing sometimes on the shootouts.
Yep.
Like where he doesn't go down, he just put the two pads together and the puck hits him. So, and that's when you talking about and Dobie talking about, it's instinct. And that's what I 100% agree with them, that you don't want to make it too robotic. You want to talk to the kids and, make sure they know how to do it. They have to know how to do it, but, it's their choice what they're going to do. So that's how I look at things. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but that's kind of my thing.
Well, isn't that the beautiful thing about this position? There's never necessarily a right or wrong on anything, right? It is so unique to the goaltender themselves.
Yeah, 100%. And but some people, some people may think, you have to play in the reverse VH, and how you can argue that if the guy is 6'5", 6'6", and he does reverse VH really well, and his hips doesn't bother him, his ankles doesn't bother him when he is going in it, well, good for him. Play it. Don't give up goals, and then nobody gonna question you. That's how simple that is, right? Really.
I want to get into sort of your upbringing. Like we talked about, it was different back then. Not a lot of none of the goalie schools are sort of what we'd consider modern approaches to camps and things like that. How'd you fall in love with the position? Where did the passion that you have for goaltending start?
Well, I think mine came kind of naturally from my dad, right? So I used to go to practices with him and hang out at the rink. And, me and my dad, we talked about it all the time. And he goes, I just have no idea that you you will be a goalie. You just ask one day for the gear, and we got you a gear, and that was the rest of it. So, back in the day, now a lot of people talk about, who is your idol, who is your this, but back in the 80s, at least in Russia, it just, you like it, then you go play. You don't put too much into, thinking, because don't forget, like, I don't know how it was in Canada or in the US, but in Russia in 80s, it literally was 3-4 channels, hockey channels. And the only way you can watch a hockey if the national team is playing at the World Championship, or you have some really big games like Red Army CSKA against Dynamo or Spartak or something like that, where it's like, prime time kind of game. And that's about it. And it wasn't that often. So, for me, everything came from my local hockey team. My dad played for the team. My buddies were hockey players. It was a hockey community. And to me, it kind of came as a second nature. Everything was based on a homegrown team. So,
and your dad, Victor, played, I think, 18 years professional in both Russia and Kazakhstan. Now, did I read somewhere that he actually started a goaltending school in your hometown at one point? Was he ahead of the curve? Maybe not what we think of as today's goalie schools, but it sounds like he was ahead of his time a little bit.
Yeah, well, in Russia, each club, like let's take the San Jose Sharks as a club, right?
Yep.
So they would be the NHL club. Well, everything underneath, you have all the ages coming underneath, because the junior Sharks would feed the big club. That's how it was set up in Russia.
Okay.
Every junior age group, eventually they would feed the main club. So that's how we had, my dad was a goalie coach, and we, in Russia back then, we never had, 3 different teams of 1975 born. We really had only one. They pick the best ones and they go with that, and that's it. So, the other kids would be skating somewhere else, and that's how the team was set up. And so it's like in the States here, it's AAA, I would say.
Right.
Something like that. And, my dad happened to be, coaching us, and, we would have once a week for sure, we would have hour and a half, a long time, nothing but goalies. So we would have all the ages going on the same ice sheets. And, we didn't have even shooters. It was no shooters. It's all about technique, playing the puck. We would play literally, 3-on-3 with the gloves and blockers. We would play a scrimmage.
Really?
Believe it or not. Yeah. It was,
Well, it would make you a great skater. It would help your puck control, your puck handling. Like, there's a lot of. I'm not surprised that you were good in all those regards.
Keep your head up, all those things, right? And you hold the edges, you poke checking the pucks and all that, right? So, and we did this quite a bit, and eventually, so the birth years were 75, 76, and 74, mostly. So we had 6 goalies, and then we're younger guys, 77. All those guys at some point played in kind of a high level of hockey. Some have played in the NHL, some have played in AHL, and some of it played, big in the, I think 2 or 3 guys played in the Olympics for Kazakhstan later on.
Wow.
And also they played, now it's KHL, but back then it wasn't the KHL. It was a different name for the league. But they played on those teams. So they all played pro in a pretty good level. So, and in Russia, it's always been like this. The goalie school always been strong. It just, at some point, not everybody wants to move. Not everybody wants to leave the country and go somewhere else. I'm sure you heard of the name Vasily Koshichkin, who is a 6'5" and probably as big as Robert Lehner. He could easily play in the NHL, but he decided not to come. And I have a bunch of examples like this, and pretty strong goaltending school. And, you have obviously the past with, Tretiaks and Mishkins and Belashakins. And, so it's kind of a tradition. And at some point, I'm not going to lie, at some point, I think, I would say probably early 90s.
Yeah.
It's been a little bit off track. It has been off track a little bit. But I think in early 2000s, it started coming back. And, I think Tretiak has a lot to do with that. So he helped out big time in Russia to help the young goalies grow and have more opportunities to play.
Right, and we talked about that the other day. Making sure that the teams in the KHL are using homegrown talent, and now you're seeing that homegrown talent have success, not just there, but all over the world. And here in the NHL, the Shesterkins, the Sorokin coming over, Vasilevsky. Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. What was it like for you? So you played 3 years in your hometown team, I'm assuming at the pro level, and then you get drafted by the San Jose Sharks. 9th round. I don't know that they even got to see you play. I don't think we have a 9th round anymore. Did you even know you'd been picked? Like, what was it like in 94? Because I don't think they even contacted you till 97. So walk us, because a lot of people listening think of the draft nowadays. It's on TV and everybody knows, but what was it like back then?
Well, I think the story has been told quite a bit, right? But at the age of 19, I moved to Dynamo Moscow. So I went to Moscow, actually right in 94, and we have a training camp, and somebody just brought the newspapers, and we were in the sauna just reading newspapers and chatting, and somebody goes, "Hey, do you know that you get drafted?" And we just had a good laugh, like, yeah, whatever. So what does that mean? Well, nothing, okay. Because the goal literally was to try to make the Dynamo team, because,
right,
back in the day, I think for everyone, from far away from Moscow, everybody wants to make that Moscow team. So one of the Moscow teams was huge, especially Dynamo and CSKA.
Yeah.
Those ones were the top teams, because if you make that team, then you have a good chance to make it to the national team. And that's how, we were thinking, me and my dad. So we were hoping to make the team. We were hoping to make the national team later on. And, that's all what we were thinking of. To be honest with you, the news about the draft, it was no news, really, to be honest with you. Like, okay, good. But it's kind of was, I don't want to say unreachable, but it wasn't the goal.
It was out of mind.
It was out of mind. It was, I knew that I had to take care of, different things first. So I guess that's why I wasn't that excited, actually. And yeah, nobody called, nobody, it was different times. I don't think so. It's right or wrong. It's just different times. Especially in the ninth round or 8th round, whatever that was.
I hadn't heard the sauna story, so that's a good one, and our listeners are going to love that one. So you spent 3 years at Dynamo and Dynamo, and you win a league championship there, I think in your first season, actually. When did you start thinking about coming over? How hard a decision was that? Because as you said earlier, that wasn't necessarily the goal for most guys. And a lot of guys came over and just, whether it was Tarasov, whose son is in the Columbus organization. I looked his experience up, and after 14 games in the American League, he just went home, which was understandable at the time. What was the decision like for you to come over? What was the process like? And through that, I want to get to a big name and a big influence, Warren Strelow. But first of all, how tough was it to make the decision and then to sort of get through those first couple of years where it's not straight to the NHL like for some guys it is now?
So, in the first 3 years in playing for Dynamo, we won the championship twice. We won the first year and I think the third year. And we were in the finals in European League, which has been played before, which were pretty big. And we went to the finals and we lost to TPS in the finals. And that's when, first time John Ferguson and Wayne Thomas, I met them at the in Helsinki. I think it was Helsinki. We were in Helsinki and, they approached and, tried to talk to me, but mostly they talked to our managers and stuff. And that's when I think they kind of offered for me to come next year. And then it was during the season, I'm like, I don't know, but I was so happy and I was so, we had such a good time in Dynamo. It was such a great organization run by the great people. And I wasn't sure even if I was even considering at the time. But when the season was over, I think they made another call. And then me and my dad, we kind of chat and, and he actually said it. He goes, well, you won 2 championships here. He goes, well, it's time maybe to try to, to thinking about something else. He goes, you always can come back here. But if you're going to miss the window, you may never going to go there again.
Right.
So that's kind of thinking behind it. And that's when I decided to go in 87. And I signed a contract. And so.
How hard was it? I think that even today we underestimate and we are naive as North Americans to how big of a jump it is, how much of a culture shock it can be, and how little help sometimes there is for players coming in, a new culture, a new language, all those elements. How tough was it for you at the time?
Well, it wasn't easy. Now we're looking back, it's either going to make you or it's going to break you. So it depends if you have that in you to stay patient and, because you don't know the language and it was hard to order any food. Everything was different. No cell phones, no FaceTimes, no Skype. It was nothing like that, right? So, you try to communicate and you try to kind of survive. But I think that the toughest thing was on the ice actually than off the ice. Because you're coming in and, nobody tells you, what they expect, what they want. They just basically saying, okay, go and show me what you can do in the training camp, right? And then you do well in the training camp and they tell you that you're doing really good job. But then they send you to the minors, right? And that's where you're like, okay, you're telling me that you're doing a good job. You're telling me that everything is good, but you're going to the minors. So every Russian just don't think that way. If you're telling me that everything is good, that means I have to be in NHL. That's how, a lot of people think that way, but obviously it didn't happen that way. And, you have to go to, I had to go to AHL and fight it through. And it wasn't easy. So, yeah.
Well, there are so many guys I'd love to ask you about. You played at obviously Vesa Toskala. Mika Kiprasov was in the organization for a while. But the one I really wanted to hit on for today before we let you go is the impact that Warren Strelow had on you, both in general terms, Nabby, but also specifically. What kind of things was he teaching that were maybe new to you at the time that you saw as being really important to all the success you had afterwards in the NHL? And are there any that still, even today are sort of core foundational pieces that you work with your young goalies, whether it's youth or in the development role or right up to the NHL?
Well, he has been huge for me. And, because he is basically the guy who, supported me, even if I didn't have a good game or, I wasn't in the mood to do certain things. He was so patient with me, and he was a teacher before, right? So he knew how to handle the psychological part. And, he always was telling me, be patient, be patient. At some point I was telling him, I'm like, I don't want to be patient. I want to now. Right. And, he's always just been there, and on the ice, his thing was that you have to move well on the ice. And we changed certain things. We went away from the too many C cuts in the crease. We went, more about straight line. And now if you watch, all the successful goalies, that's what makes you successful. You almost don't have too many C cuts anymore. A couple of guys using it, but it's more over, you're moving in the crease with the shuffles and at times maybe T pushes, but you work on that like crazy. And then he's been big on the stick, to deflect everything with the stick, which is kind of, I think, went away a little bit in the NHL, but I'm seeing it now. It starts coming back too. The guys who want to control the rebounds, using the sticks more to deflect the pucks in the corner. And, so those things, he's been really good with me. And we did specific drills. We did the specific work. But then the CBA changed, right? So then everybody decided that no more camps, no more nothing. So clubs wasn't able to do it. So, and I was, we couldn't find any more coaches who can work with you in the summer, so, but he's been everything for me. So
it's interesting to hear that, because I forgot you would have been allowed to do a lot more work back then. And nowadays it has kind of changed what goalies can do. And that's got to affect you as a goaltending coach right now in terms of having to be careful and like all the different things you can and can't do. Is that frustrating at times? Because I know I talk to the goalies and they want to work quite often with the guys who are part of the team, and they can't. So it's a tough line. It's a tough line for you guys. That and yeah, go ahead.
Kev, you know what? I just don't understand. And I get it. NHLPA and everybody involved, and they doing a decision for the players, this and this. But all the players, all the goalies, what they do now, they all go into the camps. They're all working on something. Like goalies go to 2 or 3 camps right before the training camp.
Yep.
And they basically doing what we used to do with, let's say, Warren. I'm just going to go on my example.
Yeah.
We would go to Minnesota. All the goalies who belongs to the club goes, and we work on stuff. So it's kind of the same thing right now, but now you have to pay out of your pocket everything to find those private coaches, and it's just not easy to find the guy you really like.
Well, so it doesn't. It'd be better if they could work with a guy they're going to work with all season, because as you know, sometimes the changes you need to make in a goalie, practice time is so hard to find in season. You'd be better to start that process with a guy, like you said, not that you're trying to change him completely, but those little refinements would be better to start if you had a chance to work with him in the summer rather than trying to carve it out of the practice time in a tough schedule.
100%. Yeah, 100%. If you want to work on something and change certain things, little details, the best way to do it in, that easy environment, and you can go on the ice and specifically work on that. And you specifically can break it down, how to do it. And, but, again, now it's better probably for the private coaches, because now they have the, ability to make income. And so now instead of the team doing this, the private coaches do all that, which is, I guess, fine as long as, they know what they're doing.
Right. Hey, last one, because we're at that time limit, but how have you enjoyed, what's been the hardest and the best part of transition from playing to coaching? Obviously, you guys play a different style than you did. The stances, although interestingly enough, Navi, like, that trend towards a narrower stance is coming back, and something that you thrived on in your career. Hey, everything old is new again. Like, what do you love about it? What keeps you passionate about it? And what's been the biggest adjustment?
Well, I'm in hockey, right? So that's the best thing. You in hockey, you with the hockey mind, around, hockey players, you around the coaches, and when you, like, I've been in hockey since I was let's say from fourth grade. It's been legitimately probably 2 times a day, and all what like friends, everything is hockey, everything around hockey. And to be around hockey, I guess that's what I like, to be around the group of those type of group of guys, and being on the ice and communicating. And sometimes you having a good time, sometimes you don't, right? Because if you lose and things didn't go well, so then it's no such a good time anymore. You have to fix it. You have to work on stuff. You have to watch the video, which is a working process. It's great to do what you love. So it's been kind of, I would say I don't want to say it's easy, but it's something you love to do. And that's all I can ask for. And, I guess the challenge is to communicate with different personalities. For me, that's what, when you're a player, you don't have to deal with that. You just go and play. Now, when you're a coach, you have to deal with different personalities. Everybody has, just different, right? People are different. So,
Yeah.
And, you have to adjust to that, which is also give you a good, life lessons where, everybody's opinion is matter. That's what I'm learning. And it's not just your opinion. It's not just your stuff. It's, you have to learn how to listen also. So.
That's a good lesson. It's a part-time psychologist and psychiatrist, frankly, in that job these days. And you're right. You do have to know it all. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, Nabi, hey, listen, can't thank you enough for this time. Like I said, I know our audience is going to love this conversation. I really appreciate it. I know you have been busy. So thank you so much for giving us a half hour. And I'm going to, there's so much other stuff. I mean, you played 43 games in a row one year. Like the era of the workhorse goaltender. So many things I want to talk to you about. So why don't we just save that for maybe next year? We'll catch up for a part 2. How does that sound?
Okay, sounds good. We can do that.
All right. Thanks, Nabi. We'll talk to you soon.
Fascinating conversation. He is of an era that I watched almost all of his games, and being able to listen to him talk about not only goaltending today, but his goaltending journey. And then you look at Russian goaltenders over the years. And we all know Tretiak and Mishkin, and then we're more familiar with the goaltenders that are trying to break through right now. And then we have the 3 goaltenders in the conference finals. And can you guys say with certainty that there is a quote unquote style of Russian goaltending?
No, and you know what I was going to say too, the one thing that Nabi, and I don't think we didn't hit it on in this interview as much, but he gave me a couple minutes the day before for a column I had to write. And one thing he wanted to stress, so if he didn't get a chance to in this interview, I want to make sure I stress it for him, is there was always good Russian goaltending. He really believed that. And he talked a lot about Tarasov's, and of course, Daniel Tarasov is now a really high-end prospect for the Columbus Blue Jackets. Well, his dad was drafted by the Montreal Canadiens. They convinced him to come over, but then they sent him to the American League. And, the 14 games later, he wanted to go home. And so there was a lot of guys that just didn't come over and give it the shot like Nabi did and grind through, a year or 2 years in the American League. And so maybe that's why it's taken so long for this influx we see now. But I think you're right. I mean, look at Khudobin, comparisons to Tim Thomas. And I think he's got a little more technical foundation because, hey, it's 8 years later, right? Somebody commented it on a social media post about Khudobin and Thomas and said how Khudobin had way more structure and Thomas didn't do this and Thomas didn't do that. I'm like, Tim Thomas won a cup before the RVH was even being used in North America. Like, it's a while ago, right? 9 years ago. So, but then you look at Varlamov, very structured, but still, some uniqueness in his stance elements. Actually, some of the glove stuff that New York has tried to not beat out of him, but take out of him a little bit to sort of tighten things up. And then, Vasilevsky, who's
is he a hybrid of the two?
Yeah, he's probably a little more technical, but then that layer of athleticism and the ability to go outside the box and make saves behind his back, whether you should or not, you can. And just the power he has, like, he's just a freak. They call him Big Cat for a reason. Might be the best goalie in the NHL. So yeah, it's interesting. And what's really interesting to me is that lack of sort of one unified way of doing things is a lot of what the NHL goalie people I talk to find attractive about Russian goaltending right now. Is they haven't all been put in the same technical box. They don't get overcoached at too young an age. And the question, of course, is how long will that last? Because anytime you have a rush to the position, there's also a rush to coaching it. And Nabby talked about the improvements in coaching, but eventually what happens is that coaching tends to creep down to too young an age, and they become a little too structured, and they lose some of the instinct that guys to this point have had to survive on up until later years. So it'll be interesting to see. Like, Askarov is obviously going to be the first goaltender pick in this year's draft. Could be even higher than Spencer Knight was taken last year. And yet I watch him and I see a lot of Sergei Bobrovsky. And I'm reminded of my conversation with Anton Khudobin a year and a half ago when he told me about his experiences with Nabby. And when Dobie now goes back and does the mentorship thing, he's the guy that comes in and talks to the kids. One of the things he's worried about, he says they all want to be Bob. They all want to look like Bob. Well, you can't all be Bob. You're not all supposed to be Bob. You don't all play like Bob. You don't all move like Bob. Why do you all want to be like Bob? And when I watch Askarov, I see a lot of Bob. And so I'm curious. I don't know, because Askarov's got, like, he moves incredibly well. But I'm curious when I hear Anton Khudobin say they all want to play like, and they're all being taught to play like this guy. And now I see this really highly regarded prospect who plays like that guy. I wonder if this is the start of that. I don't think so, but at some point that's going to happen. It seems to inevitably happen with most development paths. So we've seen it happen with Sweden. So everybody sort of starts to look the same. Not necessarily a good thing.
No, but I don't know. I've been listening to you talk about this for a long time, Woody, and I'm not always on board with it. And one of the things that I loved about this interview is I got a sense that there was a lot of coaching going on there, and that it is an okay thing, what I was hearing from him. And I would argue it's not necessarily that coaching is a bad thing at a young age. It's that it has to be proper coaching and has to acknowledge some of those opportunities to develop athleticism and not be cookie cutter. And the risk of upsetting people, it's a little too easy to get into goalie coaching. And as a result, everybody just who's played the game can give it a go. There's a difference between just getting out there and showing the kids a few things and actually being a master coach. And I think it's okay to coach young kids.
Well, I'll give you an example of the type of coaching that he's talking about, because you would just go to Alexander Georgiev. And so the coaching that he got and that a lot of these guys got at a young age isn't what it's not butterfly put. Like, Georgiev talks about skating for 2 straight hours without ever seeing a shot. Just skate, 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 skate. And now his movement is the foundation of his game. But that there would be the difference versus him at a young age, just skate, 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 versus at 7 or 8 years old, we're teaching post integration.
The line of the interview to me was when Nabokov said, Nabby, to his friends like Woody, said, we teach the goaltenders all the different ways to make the save, but then it's up to the athlete to go out and pick the one that they want to use.
Great point.
And I thought, I've never heard it put in that language before. You're not teaching just RVH or VH or post integration, double up on the post. They have to know it all, and then you pick. And I thought that was kind of cool.
That's a great point, and we've talked about that with respect to kids learning to work with different coaches. It's just another tool in the toolkit, and you might as well learn what they're teaching you. And it is another tool for you to later employ. And I've said before, I think there's we need to sort of periodize this. There is a time when you can give some coaching, and then there's a time when you have to stand back and let them take those tools and apply them and see what they can do with them. There has to be some experimental opportunities, I think, on the ice.
Well, and I think the biggest thing is to come back to it is it's how early you introduce some of that structured thing. And the word that was used with me by someone over there is not become too institutionalized. And that's what the strength of Russian goaltending is. It's not too institutionalized at too young an age in terms of technique. Goalies develop with quality skill, but also compete and instincts and reactivity rather than learning too much technical too soon. So, like, I think we're saying the same thing. That's basically the difference. It's still good coaching. It's just at what age do you introduce too much of what this person used? The word he used was institutionalized. And interestingly enough, this was sent to me as part of prep for an interview with Vladislav Tretiak that I hope actually happens after we finish recording tonight. The only downside is I found out this afternoon that we're not going to be able to use it on the podcast because he's going to be using a translator. So I was kind of hoping to be able to sneak in a Vladislav Tretiak interview next week for us too, but we'll be able to at least write it up and have it up on the website as well as at NHL.com. So and that's sort of what they've tried to do is make sure that you don't get too structured, too institutionalized at too young an age.
See, that's another sign of how much the world has changed. Like under Tikhonov and the Red Army, like that was as structured of a program as you were ever going to find in sports. Never mind hockey. And
But I don't know, Darren. Like, yes, it was an incredibly structured program, but when we first bumped into the Red Army teams in '72, wasn't it that flow and creativity in their game that sort of blew people away? So I think you can have those two things. I think you can have some structure in your teaching and still allow creativity in how you then employ it. Does that make any sense?
Look a little bit. Yeah. Well, that's fair.
Well, and that kind of goes back to what I meant. Like you were right, Hutch. It's not about not coaching. It's about what you're coaching at what age and when. And so Georgiev getting all these skating drills, he even called them old school Tretiak Russian skating drills.
Yeah.
We talked about Nabby and the old school drills. That's what he did. And we knew coaches here in the Lower Mainland who actually sometimes get overlooked, but have an exceptional record of turning out high-end goalies. And what their strength is skating at a young age. It's all skill. It's all fun. It's all skating development. I think it can get there can be just a little too much too soon. That's all. And that's the argument I hear from a lot of people.
So fair to say a Russian goaltender doesn't have a distinct style, like Russian goaltending doesn't have a distinct style?
I think it's fair to say that to this point, it hasn't been as distinct. I mean, At the end of the day, it's not like they're not butterflying. No, right? And at the end of the day, as much as everybody wants to make the Tim Thomas comparison with Anton Khudobin, and as much as what makes the highlight reel is Dobie swimming on his belly and kicking out his legs and doing, scorpion saves, the reality is if you watch his skating, his structure, and his reads, those are all at a very high level that I would think we would want to teach every kid. Like he beats plays on his feet, set, square. He reads plays. He anticipates. He doesn't commit early. He battles through. I thought, frankly, one of the issues for Vegas was they did get traffic, but it was always just one. And so Khudobin, despite being 5'11", which is another thing we can talk about, is able to manage that. He can find sight lines around that. He can't look over it like an Andrei Vasilevsky can, but he's good enough at sort of picking a side and making a read and then getting into the spot after he's made that read. Patience, edge work, power, beating plays to the top of the crease, beyond the top of the crease. Like those are all skills that we should want in every goaltender. The mix and the blend, maybe in Russia, isn't as unified. It's not as the same for everyone. It shouldn't be the same for anyone in any country.
I watched Vasi do that stand straight up and little bunny hop over top. It was unbelievable. I was just watching it about 10 minutes ago. Well, not 10 minutes ago, but before we started this podcast. Is this the golden age for Russian goaltending? And I asked that because I'm curious. 1972 was a long time ago. The influence of Vladislav Tretiak, and then through the 70s into the 80s, and we're seeing the golden age of goaltending right now from Russia.
We may just be seeing the start of it, depending on who you talk to. I mean, this could be just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, Vasilevsky, we got Bob won 2 Vezina trophies. Vasilevsky's won 1. He's a finalist this year. You had 7 Russian goaltenders play a game in the NHL this year. That tied a record, but the role they played was the last time we had 7 was 2014-15, but the role these guys played was at an absolute high. 232 starts, 136 wins for Russian goaltenders in the National Hockey League this year. Those are both all-time highs, and I didn't have to prorate them for the fact that the season was shortened. They set both those records in a 68-game season or 70-game season, an abbreviated season. Those were still records. You add Shesterkin, who's going to have a bigger role next year. You add Sorokin, who's probably going to have a role in an all-Russian tandem with the Islanders next year. You add Askarov, and however long before he comes over, you start to look at the number of Russian names in the prospect pools, like Tarasov. There's a bunch.
Washington, right?
Right. Yeah. Samsonov will have a bigger role. The one that Carolina drafted, is it Kuchetkov? I always mess that one up. Damn it, he was at the World Juniors last year, and I still don't know how to say his name right. But like, they're big on him. Like, I think we are just seeing the start. What I'm most curious about is how long it lasts. Because again, I have that conversation with a lot of these goalie coaches that, love the fact that a lot of those elements that compete, that instinct, they just feel it's stronger over there because it's left to develop on its own and flourish a little longer than maybe it is sometimes over here.
And they also made a commitment to their KHL to have homegrown talent, right?
Yeah, and Nabby talked about that with Tretiak deserving credit, where there's I can't remember if it's mandated or incentives, but there's spots there for Russian goaltenders, and that's the other thing you see. Like, some of these guys are picked high, and teams have to wait on them, which can make NHL teams hesitant. But they arrive from the KHL. I don't want to say a finished product because there's an adjustment to a smaller rink, but that game, that East-West game, where it's patience and pass, dust it off and pass one more time, like, the ability to have to hold and have patience on edges and not overcommit playing that style seems to be translating really well. So both for the KHL and providing more homegrown talent, and for a league that seems in some ways to translate, at least from a goaltending perspective, to the National Hockey League, those are all positives.
So here's a question for you, Woody. As you mentioned them getting more time over there as we have to wait for them to come, is the Canadian kid at a disadvantage because they get their 2 or 3 years and then they're overlooked, whereas they're able to develop over there? I mean, by the time some of these guys arrive, a Canadian kid at that age, if he hasn't made it, he's not going to make it.
Well, this is why I'd recommend NCAA. The ages we're talking about, this is why I think unless you're like surefire, this is why you want to go to NCAA route versus CHL. With all due respect to the CHL, your window's over by the time you're 20. If you haven't peaked at 20, if you haven't hit that, if you haven't raised the attention of scouts, you're probably going to struggle to get an opportunity. If you haven't been drafted, I mean, how many guys do we know now that we think are pretty good goaltenders? They can't even get a spot in the East Coast Hockey League because teams are going 6 deep and they're pumping prospects all the way down to the coast. And so if you're not in that food chain, you don't have much of a chance. And if you're a late bloomer in any way, shape, or form, good luck finding a place to play until you have an opportunity to bloom. Whereas over there is more opportunity. I agree with that.
I miss you guys.
Maybe they'll open the border.
NCAA could be a whole show. That could be a lot of fun.
Yeah. I long for the day when you can play in the CHL and then go to the NCAA.
Yeah. Yeah, not going to happen.
Not sure that's
not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not around the corner. I've been waiting for that for a long time. I don't know why.
We have that up here, Darren. It's called the CIS.
I know.
Or U Sports. I'm telling you, man.
Getting more credit.
And it works.
It's getting more credit.
4 years ago, I said that every time I saw a late blooming NCAA college goalie sign a free agent contract with an NHL team, and some of them have been great, and some of them were great. Some of them, I watched them, and I'm like, man, there are kids up here that can play coming out of Canadian University. They end up going overseas for the most part, but the only one difference is the ones that get the opportunity, NCAA tend to be taught, the ones that end up in the CIS up until recent years have all been sub 6 foot. And
You're
so
right about that.
They tend to get tiered down and overlooked. But I'm watching these kids and they can play. And again, it's another conversation and we could just keep going. But Anton Khudobin is 5'11", and he's doing just fine. Thank you very much.
Wow. And being creative and having fun while he's doing it. Really happy for him. Former Saskatoon Blade, Anton Khudobin, going to the Stanley Cup Final with the Dallas Stars, into the Championship Series for the first time since the year 2000. Rick Bowness as well. Congratulations taking over that, and shows you what a head coach can do just being part of that group. Hutch is our coach, and we follow him in lockstep. He sets the tone for us on In Goal Magazine, ingoalmag.com, and In Goal Radio, the podcast. For Kevin Woodley, in great conversation with Evgeni Nabokov, and welcome back, Cam, with the Hockey Shop, a source for sports Surrey, and David Hutchison, the co-founder of In Goal Mag. I'm Darren Lard. Thanks for listening to In Goal Radio, the podcast, presented by the Hockey Shop, source for sports Surrey. Everything's going to be right again.